Hello. Good morning. I think it's time. I need to start the lectures according to schedule times. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus six students at this moment, but it's fine. No, 7. Okay. Welcome to my lectures. The network security. It's my pleasure to communicate. I will now to use the word teaching to communicate with you in the following 1 week. First is the brief introductions. This is about me. My name is Fu Chun Guo. My research interest is about cryptology. I joined the UOW since 2009. Joined as a PhD candidate, so I have been in Australia in UOW for more than 17 years. My research interest is about the cryptology, but don't worry, I will not try to show what I'm good at. So about this subject, this is about the network security. I will concentrate on the network and security, not about the cryptology. So I know cryptography is sometimes very scale, so I will try to reduce the component of cryptography in this subject. Actually, in the past 7 years, I have been teaching this subject for more than 7 years. I have tried my best every year, try to cut the cryptology part as much as I can, just because this is about the network security, and about the cryptography or cryptology, there's no need to design it or somehow attack it. Just know the basics. That would be good enough for learning these subjects. And I will and also about the cryptography, I will I think this afternoon I will introduce all cryptography required in this subject. Okay, it's more about how to use it as the building block. And about this subject, is about the email communications, because after 1 week teaching, I believe, and go back to the Australia, and we might need some kinds of email communications. This subject we will have 2 assignments, and they will be marked by the tutor Ken. And so if you were to appear or argue some kinds of the markings, you must CC to the tutor. Okay, that's important. And the tutor will also run the lab with you. And this some kind of details is more like about some kinds of email communications, not just for these subjects, but also for your some kinds of the communication skills that you will have with your college or your supervisor in the futures. So when writing the email, make sure that you will have a clear the subject. It's not blank, and it's important to introduce who you are, and especially your name and then your student numbers, because without this one, it's very hard for us to link to who you are, and also to the SMP system to know about who you are. And well, it's yes. The next is somehow it's which suggests that you can briefly describe the background before the questions. This will help me understand what you really want from me. Okay, this is help me understand, because sometimes even for the same questions from different students, you might have different requests, and then followed by your questions. And for the title, you can just start with hi, hello. Okay, and my name is Richard, and in the following communication in this week, if you cannot remember my name, it's okay. You can just call me professor, although I'm associate professor only. Okay, you can just call me professor of Richard. And if you would like to ask the questions related to the knowledge, because nowadays with the help of AI or some things, it's easier for you to get the knowledge from everywhere else. Because this kind of communication is just not to help you clear the knowledge, but also one step of learning progress. So I hope that you can also clearly present your questions or why you have these kinds of questions. And try the best to give your answers and thinking, even if they are wrong. This is some kind, because what? Because learning via teaching, this is it's a very, or it's the most important, or the really the only ones that it can really help you truly learning a lot. I will introduce this one in the following slides. And for this kind of email communications, as well as that, knowledge is everywhere. Delivering this kind of knowledge is not important. The most important is to correct your thinking. Without present the background or something else, I cannot understand or I cannot see which point you made a mistake. Okay, so it's better to write something more than what you think you should do. This can help me to correct your thinking. And okay, this is the special page. I think I haven't updated this kind of slides in the Moodle, but don't worry. After all the lecture slides, I will update all lecture slides, including some kinds of slide pages because in the lecture slides in the following lecture slides I will have some kinds of questions for practice, but I didn't upload the answers. So yes, I will update the slides. And this is a special page designed by me. So what's the active learning? Actually, this is some kinds of thinkings. It came up just in the past 2 months. So how to have the so-called active learning? It's actually by achieve the so-called extreme learning. And I believe that with the help of this kind of 3 level of understanding, this will help you to really understand what the content is or what the knowledge is. After the exam of these subjects, you can delete all knowledge or contents from your mind about this kind of network subjects. But I hope the only page that you can remember is this page. This is the only page I require to remember after passing this subject. Okay. So how to conduct this kinds of extreme learning? There are 3 approaches. We cannot see approaches. You need to have. There are 3 kinds of approaches. You need to use all of them together. The first one is to restate and then able to teach. It means what? If you can explain it in your own language, you are able to understand it. So after you have learned something, try to restate or explain it using your own language, your logic to help you understand. And if your classmates is not be able to understand it, yes, I try to teach your classmate, help learn to understand. And if you are able to do it, it means that yes, you do understand it. The next is the so-called compare and summarize. Try to compare the methods and see what's the difference and what's the same. If you are able to do it, it means that you can reuse it elsewhere. Now AI is very powerful. AI can do lots of comparison and summaries for us. But what I mean here, compare and summarize something like is can you try to make it better than what AI can do, or try to use your own language, your own logic to do this kinds of the compare and summarize. It's somehow called above and beyond. Means what? Means that based on the AI's output, AI already give a very basic version about this kind of comparisons and summarize. So can we do something better than what AI can do for us? And the last one is try, fail, learn, identify the failures. Once you have learned something, try to use it, apply it, and you might fail and find something. Oh, this is not working, but it's fine. Try to understand or know why it failed. And if you are able to identify why it's not working, it means that you really understand where it works and where it doesn't. Okay. So restate and teach. And the second method is compare and summarize. The third approach is try, fail, and identify the failures. For this kinds of the so-called extreme learning, it's really time-consuming. really time consuming. I don't think all of you like this subject, network security, to be honest, I know. And I would like to say, you don't need to apply this kinds of learning approaches to the so-called network security. I hope you are able to apply, at least apply this kinds of learning strategy to at least one subject that you like the most. Yes, I don't think that everyone of you will like the network security, and this is quite normal. Each of us definitely have the so-called the strengths and also the weakness in the whole life, according to my experience and also some other my supervisors, my college experience. I found that try to improve or try to remove the weakness. This is somehow nearly impossible. If you have time, try to spend your time in enhancing your strengths. That's much more valuable than try to removing your weakness, because each of us, I don't think the weakness can be removed. Okay. But what we can do is try to enhance the strengths. Okay, and I hope this is something that you are at least able to remember. At least keep understand this one. Try to practice it for in the following years. It's really time consuming, okay? But try it and definitely you will learn something from these kinds of extreme learning progress. Okay, about this subject, about the class, because we will have 3 hours, and in this morning, and also 3 hours in this afternoon. So usually I will start 5 minutes late and finish 5 minutes earlier. And for this room, I will try my best to finish 10 minutes earlier. Make sure you have time to go to have the lunch and the break. And oh, I haven't set up the time clock. And after about 50 minutes lectures, we will have a 10 minutes break. Okay. And we might finish the lectures earlier than the schedule just because of the content length of each lecture slides. I will try my best to finish each lecture slides within the scheduled 3 hours. And about this kinds of the interactive learning during the lecturings, I have been teaching these subjects at SIM campus here for 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is the 4th times. According to my experience, many of you don't like this kind of interactive learning, but and you prefer to come to ask the questions after the lecture. So it's fine. I will ask the questions and pause maybe just 4 seconds. If there's not interaction, no response from you, I will continue to do the lecturings. But of course, I'm very happy to accept any questions during my lectures. Sorry, let me set up the clock. Okay, and about these subjects, this is the following topics I'm going to cover in these lectures. Most of them are about the protocols in this kind of network communication. The first lecture is about the subject introduction and also the basics of network security. I think you ever learned something related to the networking technology in the year one about the networking, and that subjects mostly cover about the communications, how to make sure we can communicate successfully. And these subjects focus on what happens if the communications is successful, what kinds of issue could happen. So yes, I will quickly review the basics of the network security. And I will use the lecture 2 to quickly review all basics of cryptography. Many of you have taken the CSCI368 subject about the cryptography and its applications. And trust me, the content you are going to learn is somehow not they will not have a big overlap. Okay, because I will introduce cryptography as a building block. You don't need to go to the detailed mathematics. But yes, that's one technologies. It's quite related to the network security. It's about the so-called man in the middle attacks. And level 1, I need to go to the detailed mathematics. It's about just about the groups, okay, and that's not detailed mathematics, just a abstract operation. So I learned following by some kinds of security in the different layer, like from the application layer, transport layer, internet layer, and link layer. And the last lecture is about the security mechanisms and its firewalls. And the lecture 7, this lecture 7 is somehow quite different from the previous lecture slides and contents. Okay, and this is to show the logic or regions or where we are going to learn. And when we're talking about the networking is for about the communication protocols. And we have the security issue because there are some kind of something called attacks. Someone is attacking the networking. Because of the attacks, we have the so-called the new version of version 2 is called the security protocol. It's called the security protocol. And we try to use the security protocols to replace the so-called communication protocols. And inside the security protocols, we might use the security mechanisms. And roughly speaking, security mechanism is one kind of the technology or approach to be applied to apply in the security protocols. And currently it's fine if you cannot really distinguish what is security mechanism and security protocol. But don't worry, yes, this is what we are going to learn. Especially for the lecture 1 to date, this is just an overview. Definitely, for some of them, I will not go to the deep and I will not go to the detail. That's why it's sometimes it's not that easier for you to understand. But it's fine because some contents will be covered in the following lecture slides. And also have the labs, okay, have the labs. And the labs, this is going to introduce some kinds of real networking attacks. For the lab, actually, it's not easy to design the lab to show you, hey, this is the security protocols. Once we have the protocols, see, we can use this kind of protocol to withstand or mitigate some kinds of networking attacks. Because of this kinds of networking communication protocols and attacks sometimes is invisible. But yes, we have tried our best to show you what are real attacks. And for this kinds of the labs, according to the feedbacks, it's not that easy. It's not that easy because for some tasks you need to pre-study first to know what are the labs first. Okay. Otherwise, you need to spend lots of time in doing these kinds of labs. And the purpose of this kinds of lab is just to help you understand what you have learned from the lectures. Okay, what you have learned from the lectures. And the good news is that the content from the lab will not appear in the final exam. Okay, this is somehow to reduce your study workload because try to study hundreds of slide page in just 1 week. This is really challenging. I can understand. So yes, no questions about the final exam will be designed based on the labs. But if you have the time, it's better to join these kinds of labs because this is an important chance to help you to understand what you have learned from the lectures. And what I would like to highlight is that for these kinds of labs, you will see, oh, the kinds of content C is somehow quite different from what we have learned from the lecture slides, and this is quite normal. Okay, this is quite normal because in the practice and also the theoretical, there's a big gap. Okay, big gap. I think in the lecture 2, I have introduced some kinds of gap. You will see some difference. So it's quite normal. Okay, but just know that there are some kinds of gap, or the presentation way is somehow quite different from the labs and also from the lecture slides. But the main logic or content or knowledge is identical. And about these subjects, aims of these subjects, we try to understand the network vulnerabilities and the network-based attacks. Vulnerabilities being some kinds of potential issues. And we should be able to apply a range network security technologies for securing the networks. Yes, this is some kind of forum for security protocols, security mechanism, and use appropriate security standards. So, for example, some kinds of standard security protocols and network security tools, firewalls, to enhance the security of a distributed system. Because network actually can be understood as a big distributed system if the whole network is somehow trying to be combined together to do one kind of big task. And evaluate, compare, and recommend the network security applications and system. Here, evaluate is more like about, for example, try to analyze something. In the second assignment, you will see there's a protocol description followed by some questions. And yes, there's some kinds of the so-called evaluate and compare. And knowledge about these subjects. The first is the basic cryptography, and it will be introduced briefly in the lecture slides. Outside the lecture slides, definitely they will not appear in the final exam. Definitely will not appear in the final exam. Let's know mathematical operations in the final exam. And we will have the basic computer network knowledge, and we will introduce soon. Okay, soon, because you learn. I think you learned this one in year 1. So yes, I will quickly review this one. And about the programming, I think 2 years ago, about the so-called assignment 1, they have not had a heavy programming, but I have deleted the programming and redesign it with a new assignment. So no need for assignment or exam. Okay, don't worry about the programming. And about the mathematical calculation, very basic, and definitely will not appear in the exam. And the only mathematics level, the operations, all will be covered in the second lecture slides. Okay, in the lecture slides. Some of you have taken the 361 subjects, cryptography, its applications. I ever students in previous years and asked them the feeling, what are the main difference between these subjects and cryptography subjects. Some students, they have the same feeling. That subject is very have lots of mathematics and calculations. And this subject, it looks more theoretical, easier, but theoretical. Need to remember lots of the so-called knowledge keywords. But yes, this is somehow the only difficulties in the subjects. Every subject has the so-called trade-off. Okay, trade-off, and trade-off is also a very common, popular keywords in computer science. No matter what kinds of approaches, methodologies you have proposed, definitely there will have some kinds of advantage and also the disadvantages. And about the reference, this kind of reference, especially in the first 4, actually it's the reference books of previous lecture slides. But after years revisions, many content, especially cryptography, has been kicked off from these subjects. So yes, just have a look only. Okay, then we have the so-called the cryptography. cryptography and network security, and also the network security and network security essentials by Williams, and also this the first three more about the network security, but cryptography played a significant role still in these textbooks. The last one is more about the cryptography book. It's about the cryptography protocols for authentication and key establishment, because key establishment is very important in network security. That's why this kind of book has been put here, but it's very theoretical. You don't need to purchase or even download the so-called ebooks from this for these kinds of for books, because if needed, definitely I will highlight and let you know. But if you cannot understand, yes, you can have a look. But I don't think the most important reference resource will be the lecture slides for this subject. Okay. And if you cannot understand, I prefer you should be able to learn the communication skill with the AI. For example, you can use the ChatGPT to help you understand. And because this subject is so-called theoretical, because they'll have lots of keywords. And there's another reference called the cybersecurity, the body of knowledge. This is the manual book, and I think it has nearly collected all keywords related to the cybersecurity of the network security. If you would like to understand what is this kind of keyword, why it's important, and what's the motivation of having this kinds of keyword, you can go to browse this kinds of the menu book. That is the BOK, body of the knowledge. Okay. So again, you don't need to purchase this kinds of book. And about the learning philosophy, previously I have introduced with the active learning, and this is another tool. Again, I want to highlight, eventually you will forget what you have learned, and this is fine and quite normal. So yes, I will not blame you, okay? And the most important is that you have seen how the human, not the alien, trying to solve the problems related to the network and security. The approach, the thinking, the logic, how they apply to try to solve the network and security. So yes, this is more about some kinds of the experience. And the methodology will become your muscle memory in the future and benefit you. So that's something more like related to the philosophy. And also this is, I call it is the tree of knowledge. It's actually somehow we try to expand the knowledge deeper and deeper. It's an upside down tree. It's deeper and harder. For example, we have from A. With A can be understood as the computing. Okay, from the computing, and then we try to split it into different categories like computer science and IT and something blah blah blah, and then go to different directions. We will have different focus. So we will have different branches again and again. So that's why now we have the discipline is something becoming bigger and complicated, because we try to create different branches. And no matter which subjects you are going to learn, okay, no matter which subjects you are going to learn, that subject definitely cannot cover all knowledge. Definitely cannot cover all knowledge. And what kinds of the knowledge will be selected and presented, it somehow depends by the lectures, because even different lectures will have their different interest. But how many? We just passed 35 minutes, right? I made a mistake. And because each subject, because we have a limited time, we cannot expand on knowledge. So for this is some kind of strategy I want to highlight. For example, when we introduce this kind of node, because this node can be expanded with some more detailed knowledge like the IJK, but for this kind of lecturings, we will stop at the node F and briefly introduce our extra node and stop. So briefly means that we will not go to something details and deeper and stop it. So yes, this is some kinds of the features of the lecturing. That's why after learning these subjects, sometimes you cannot become a hacker trying to hack the system or something else, because of these kinds of doing the real practice. You need to go to the deeper and not go to the detailed settings implementation parts, but we will not go to that one. That's why after learning these subjects, you cannot become a hacker or something, but you will know what they are doing. This is something I would like to highlight. And also for this kind of upside down treat, it's also important to help you understand how to do the so-called active learning or extreme learning. In the future, if you would like to learn something, this is also the only way that you try to learn by yourself. From A, you can try to expand to different categories and try to select which part you are interested. For example, you are interested as the part at the node C, then try to understand everything under the node C and try to become the master at this area. Okay, try to become the master at this area. At this stage, no one can be the master in all areas. That's important. That's nearly impossible. So yes, again, because of these kinds of the structures, you will have the feeling that, oh, after I learned this kinds of network security, it seems that I have the feeling I have learned something. But if you ask me to explain it, what I have learned and how to apply what I have learned, it seems there's nothing. Yes, and this is true. Okay, this is true. Okay, and about the assignments and the final exam, I have already uploaded the assignments, assignment 1, assignment 2, to the Moodle site. You will see. They will have about 30 minutes, 30 marks. And the due date, I think the due date is 8th and 25th of February. You can check from the Moodle site. They will have the 30 marks, and the final exam will have about 70 marks. Previously, we will have the 40 marks in assignments and 60 marks in the final exam, but because of the AI, it's easier for you to get the high marks. And that's why, after being approved by the APD, we have reduced the marks from the weight from 40 to 30 in the assignments, and then following by the final exam. About the structures, about what kinds of questions will appear in the final exam, we will have the so-called multiple choice question with one single correct choice, and also some kinds of protocol analysis. And don't worry about this one, we will see many examples in lecture slides. I will also show what kinds of questions will appear in the final exam. Okay. And then we will have the so-called TF. Means that you need to at least get the 40% in the final exam. Otherwise, you will be given the TF. But according to my styles, don't worry about the TF. I will not give you TF. If a student, the result will have the TF, usually I will give you one more chance to do the exam. I will give you WS. Then you will have one more chance to take the exam. Make sure you can pass the subjects. And about this assignment and the final exam, you will see, you can have a look. The assignments actually is very easy. Especially you can use AI. You are allowed to use AI for help. It's easy. According to the result in previous years, many of you can get more than 25 out of 30 in the assignments. So yes, but about the exam will be hard. Okay, exam will be hard. This is my style. I designed the exams hard, or for some students they will have the feeling that the exams are super hard. But don't worry about these kinds of the questions. Okay. Because I'm good at playing magic, I will do something to make sure most of you can pass these subjects. So if especially during the final exam, if you find that for most of questions I cannot even understand the questions, I want to quit, so I just give a random answer, blah, 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 and stop and quit this kind of the final exam, then I suggest don't do it. Okay, try your best to answer all questions. Maybe you will not only pass it, but will get high marks. Okay, get them high marks. Just because it will be hard for all students. But don't worry, yes, I will try my best to play the magic to make sure most of you can pass this one, this subject. Many of you would like to know the failure rate. In the past 3 years, the failure rate of this subject is, I think, it's about 5%. 5%. Yes, about 5%. 5%. So it means that 100 students, about five students. This kind of 5% is the maximum. Okay, it's the maximum, not the minimum. Okay, so it means what? It means that even many of you did, for example, did not do well in the final exams. I will play the magic to make sure the maximum. That will just have about 5 students will be failed in this subject. So yes, that's just the maximum. And for about this assignment will be submitted via the Moodle site. It's students' responsibility to check the assignments that they have submitted. It means that after submit your assignments, please do download it and check whether this is the one that you would like to submit. It ever happens, okay? It ever happens. But after that was one student submit the wrong version and get 0 marks. And it happens. Okay, it happens, and the student didn't notice this one until the outcome, until the publishment of the final grades or the final results, and it's too late to change it. So yes, this is important for you to check this one. And penalty will be applied to all the late works, except if student have the AC. It means that if you have some kind of solid reasons that you cannot submit your assignments on time, yes, you can apply the AC. And it's important to also email me, okay? Email me, because to let me know that then I can inform the tutor. This is make sure that you will not have any deducts this one. And the late submission nowadays is even more friendly to students. If for each date, that we have just 5% of the penalty. Previously, we allowed to set up 25%, but now only have about 5% of the penalty. But something good for lecture is that we are allowed to set no more late submission after 4 days. Okay, it means that after 4 days, even theoretically you will have penalty of 20% only, but we can say that sorry, you are not allowed to submit this one. It means that you will still receive the 0 marks. So yes, don't worry. Sorry, make sure you do have this kinds of late submissions. If you are just late for a couple minutes, hours, don't worry about it, okay? Usually, the tutor will inform me, hey, this student was late for submission about 2 hours. Usually, I will say, that's fine, ignore this one. But if you are late for 1 day, more than 1 day, yes, I will apply the penalty. Okay. And about the AC, I'm bit nice to this one. It no matter what kind, I cannot say no matter what the reasons. As long as your reasons is reasonable, I'm okay to accept this kinds of AC and apply this kinds of the late submissions. And don't copy the answers from other students. Otherwise, you will receive the 0 marks. I think nowadays it's harder to catch or to caught to find the students copying the answers from other students just because of AI. But again, this is what I would like to highlight. Don't be caught if you would like to do some kinds of this kinds of asking your classmates for help or do something else. Yeah. Don't be caught. And okay, this is the previous about the subject introductions. If you have, does any one of you have the questions? If not, I will continue to introduce the concept clarification. Trying to introduce what is the difference between this concept and another concept. Okay, the first is the network security. Okay, network security. This is the name of the security. So we should have the network first, and then following by the security. Okay, and the primary role of a network is to make sure that we can have the so-called facilitate is to achieve the so-called communication between the devices. And networks enable the transfer of data, resource, and service across multiple devices. Make sure multiple devices they can communicate and talk, and allowing them to sharing the information and communicate efficiently using the protocols or using the so-called network protocols. And yes, basically, actually, we can say that most of them are for the so-called data communication or to exchange, send the data from one device to another device, and that's the main functions. And with this kind of function, we have the so-called extended functionality like the resource sharing. For example, we can share the use of printers, but actually this is something related to the data communications, and also the collaborations and the service, or support for other applications like the web service, database, and also the cloud. Everything is about the data. Okay. So the networks or communications is to communicate or exchange of the data. This is to be the core purpose, and we are trying to achieve this one using the protocol or the communication protocol. And we have the networks and also the communications. But now the next is that we will have the so-called the vulnerabilities in the communication protocols. We have these kinds of vulnerabilities in protocols. If you ask the reader why we have these kinds of vulnerabilities, well, I suggest that it's because of the world is somehow unfair to each of us. How to understand unfair? Just because each of us we have the different data. Okay. We have the different data. We have the different resource, and we want to make sure these kinds of the data and resource to be fair or to be shared by all of us. This is the reason why we have these kinds of the so-called hackers who like to do something illegal. Okay. For example, I have my own bank account. I have my own password. I will not share this kind of password with each of us. This, for example, this is the something, and because of this kind of, we have some kind of different data. We will not share it, but the attacks or hackers would like to learn it and use it or abuse it, and that's the reason why we have the so-called insecurity or vulnerabilities. And the network attacks, what's the network attacks? Network attacks is trying to exploit the vulnerabilities in protocols, allowing attackers to abuse them and compromise the security of communications. Nowadays, I think it's about in 1990s when we have the so-called networking trying to becoming popular. At that time, the hacker is trying to use this kind of network attack to show that, hey, they are good at the skills. For example, they will create some kind of virus to show that they are good at these kinds of technologies. But now, for these kinds of the hackers, nowadays they try to hide what they are doing because the purpose has been changed. They don't want to show that they are good at technology, but they would like to steal something. For example, steal the money or something, steal your information and share it for profit. That's the change of purpose. So nowadays it's becoming harder to see some kinds of the virus or some kinds of attacks because they try to do it in a secret way. And about the protocols, when we're talking about the protocols, this is the classification. About the protocol, there are two types of protocols. One protocol, especially in these subjects, is called the communication protocol. So the purpose is for communications, and it's to send a message from one device to another device. That is something called the communication. And the second one is called the security protocol. Security protocol is protocol for communications, and the main difference compared to the communication is that security is the fundamental requirements when the protocol was designed. So yes, security protocol means that it must have some kinds of security protection. Okay, some kind of security protection inside this kinds of protocol. And for the solutions, what are the solutions for security protocol? Yes, many of them or most of them require the cryptography. Okay, and some of them use the so-called security mechanism. For example, the firewalls. Firewall use the security mechanism to achieve the protections, but for other security protocol in the network communications, cryptography is something that we must use it. Otherwise, we cannot achieve the so-called security protection. And about this kinds of the security protocol, well, I would like to further clarify what is security protocol. Since security protocols in the network security are commonly divided in two broad categories. It means that for the security protocol, we can divide into two categories depending on their purpose and functions. The first one is something called integrated communication and security protocols. It means that this kind of security protocol has the two functions: communication and also security protections. For example, what we are going to learn is the SSH protocol. This is somehow not it's going to be used this one to replace some existing communication protocol with some kind of security protections. So it has some kinds of thing called provide the end-to-end communications, provide the security. So just use learn as a communication protocol. The second type is security only. Security only means that this kind of protocol is to have security protection only. It doesn't have the so-called communication function. So for example, there's the TLS protocol we are going to learn, and we are going to use this kind of TLS protocol with some others together to achieve the security. For example, that's when we're talking about the website, the server, the browsers, we have a security browsing. It's called HTTPS. protocol, but actually there's no HTTPS. It's just the combination of HTTP plus the TLS, okay, plus the TLS. And that's the no HTTPS, just the HTTP plus the TLS. Actually, just go to and look at the first assignment, because something is related to this one. And also, we also have the Kerberos protocol. It's the authentication system that relies on other transport. This is what we are going to learn this afternoon. Yes, it's about related to cryptography. So this kind of security on the protocols, they just, in short, they are used to protect existing communication protocols. Okay, they are used to protect existing communication protocols, and they use them together to achieve the so-called security. It means that they don't transmit application data by themselves. It means that they don't provide the communication. They must be embedded inside or together with another protocol. So with use of this, with others, they will be able to provide the so-called the security that we are going to introduce later. Okay, so this is our two subcategories of security protocols. Okay, let's have a 10-minute break. If you are not sure about this kind of lectures, you're welcome to come and ask me. Okay, let's continue the lectures. Okay, this is trying to create two subcategories of the security protocol. And next is we have lots of security concepts like cyber security, network security, information security, digital security, blah, blah, blah. Actually, when talking about this, the keyword is the security. When we have this concept of the adjective words before the security, it means it should be some kinds of the subset of the whole concept security. So yes, this is trying to show the difference between the cybersecurity and the network security. And in short, cybersecurity is a subset of the cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a subset of information security, which refer to a set of technologies and methodologies used to protect the integrity of the networks, device, programs, and the data from the damage, attacks, and also the unauthorized access. When, especially for the governance, talking about the security, they prefer to use the word the cybersecurity because the government would like to manage the whole areas. So when we have the issue, we call it the cybersecurity issue because usually it should have some kind of the national-wide. Okay, it's not just happen inside, for example, inside SIM campus, but happens, for example, it will impact lots of Singaporeans, and it will call the cybersecurity. And on the other hand, network security, it has some kind of focus. It's the act of protecting files and directories in networks of computers against misuse, hacking, and unauthorized access to the system. But actually, it's for this kind of unauthorized access is part of related to so-called the system security that I'm going to mention later. Network security is a subset of cybersecurity which protects the integrity of your network and network accessible resource from unauthorized access. And this kind of unauthorized access is achieved by so-called use the vulnerabilities of the network protocols. And this, in the following two slides page, this will be the difference between the network security and the system security. I think some of you have learned there's the subject called the system security in the year 2. So what are the difference? And this is something I try to summarize. They use my own language, okay? Use my own language to understand this kinds of difference. And cyberspace comprise interconnected networks and system operations under various architectures, including the traditional IT infrastructure. We use the wire or wireless to connect all different devices, enterprise networks, and modern cloud and computing platforms, including the so-called RFID, the Internet of Things. Its most valuable virtual assets are the data, digital data, and also the computing. A network focuses on the data transfer from one device to another device, while system security focus on the data processing. So networks somehow trying to deliver the data from one device to the next device. Then we will go to the second step is trying to process the data. So we have the network communications and then it's the system operations. Network security ensures that valid data can be reliably delivered to the system or from one device to another device, while protecting it in terms of confidentiality, integrity, and also authenticity. Here is not the availability, meaning it comes from an authenticated sender and it's not fake or injected. Means that injected data has been injected with some illegal data, means that the integrity has been compromised. And system security ensures that once data arrives, it's processed, stored, and accessed in ways that preserve the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, preventing unauthorized access, abuse, or privileges, or internal compromise. That's one keyword is the difference of keywords authenticity and availability. When talking about security, many of you know CIA. CIA is confidentiality, integrity, and then A. What's A? Some article mention A refer to availability, and some articles mention this A refer to authenticity. So which A is correct, or which word is the correct representing A? Actually, there's no standard answer for this one. It depends on what kinds of topic we are focusing on or talking about. When talking about the network security and this kind of security, it's more like about this kinds of the authenticity. But when talking about this kind of the system security, we're talking about this kind of availability. Because for the system, that's the key concern is that the server has been down. Once the server has been down, it means that the server cannot process the data, cannot process or respond to any request. Means that the server is not there, it's not available, and it's more about the availability. In other words, network security ensures that the data is reliably and securely transferred to device A. Okay, just for the data transfer. And system security ensures that device A process the received data as intended and without causing harm to the system. Okay. I would like to say that compared to the system security, this kind of network security is much easier because for the network security, system security is much more complicated than the network security. That's based on my observations and some kinds of communication with my colleagues. And compromise the network protocols such as fraud or misconfigured protocols, the implementations can disrupt the data transfer to systems, impacting communication availability. Of course, it means that the network also has this kinds of the availability. It's related to the communication. And similarly, network security breaches can impact the system availability. On the other side, the system failures will cause the network layer communication disruptions. It means what? It means that this kind of availability appears, of course, both in the network communication and also the system. And security in this kind of cyberspace is not just a matter of technologies, but also about the organizations and also the management. It involves the technical enforcement from both the network and system security and also the thing called the non-technical assurance called the security management. Okay, how to manage, for example, once the data has been breached, and how to do how to enhance, how to change the setting to enhance the security, or once the data has been compromised, how to do the recovery rates, and how to write a report, how to report to the managers. Everything is about the security management. Okay, such as the policy, risk assessments, and incident response strategies. For example, this kind of policy, for example, if there are some kind of data breaches happen in SIM campus, definitely there will have some kinds of policy talking about when SIM managers should report to the supervisors. Definitely there are some kinds of security breaches doesn't need to report to the supervisors, but there are some big impact definitely need to report to the supervisor. And yes, everything should be mentioned inside the policy and also the risk assessments. And yes, this is not about the technology, but about the management. So how to understand the so-called cybersecurity? Yes, I try to understand at 3 parts: system security, network security, and also the security management. The first 2 are about the technology parts, and the last is about the others, about the management or operations. Okay. Previous slides are trying to help you understand the different concepts about the security. The next is that I'm going to briefly review lots of concepts related to communications. Okay, related to communications, not too much about the security, but how to communicate. And of course, about these kinds of communication protocols, we should have one assumptions, and that assumption we will not touch it or talking about it is how to send the data out, how to send the data from one device to another device. Suppose we are able to send the data from one device to another device, then we are talking about how to send useful data. Okay, that's something we are trying to talk about. So the basic assumption, we are not to touch, or we assume it already is there. We can send the data from one device to another device. And the next topic is about the OSI and the TCP/IP protocols. In short, we have this kinds of different protocols just because communications is complicated. And because it's complicated, we split the communication into 7 layers. Okay, 7 layers. Okay, and why the communications is complicated? If you are somehow a bit confused about, why should we need to split these kinds of communication into different layers? You just have one thinking, how to understand. Just because we would like to have the different computers to join the communications at the same point or dynamically, and also we would like to allow different applications inside each device to communicate at the same time. Because of this kind of dynamic request, we have to design the communication protocol or architectures in this way. If there are only 2 devices in this world, and each device just have one applications, I would like to say this kind of communication protocol is much easier than this kind of communication protocol we are going to introduce today. Okay, it's OSI. This is a short name, Open System Interconnection, and about this kind of full name, short name, definitely it will not appear in this kind of in the final exam, because doing this kind of test, I believe is a really bad idea. So don't worry about this kind of stupid memory. I will not test it in the final exam. And it's the OSI. According to my survey and research, no one would like to remember this kind of OSI, just because after a brief introduction, people will go to the TCP/IP protocols. Why? Because it's a standard framework for designing various protocols used in computer networks. It's some kinds of framework, series, and guide trying to help people to design some kinds of communication protocols. Okay. And the OSI model divides the task into layers, into 7 layers, allowing each layer to be addressed independently or nearly so to simplify the problem solving and improve the network design. Improve the network design because once each layer has some kinds of issues, we are able to concentrate on this layer and solve the issues in this layer. So we have the 7 layers in this kind of the OSI framework. And next is the TCP/IP. Okay. So yes, what are the difference? OSI is some kinds of standard and theoretical guide, some kinds of theoretical guide trying to design the communication protocol. While the TCP/IP, the full name is Transmission Control Protocol Internet Protocols, is the foundational suite of communication protocols used for the internet and the modern networks. It was developed in 1970s and standardized or formalized in 1980s. It's somehow earlier than the OSI. Because this was released in 1980s. So it means what? We have some kind of implementations first, and then we try to standardize it. That's the OSI. And this kind of TCP/IP protocols, it has just 4 layers. Okay, 4 layers. Try to put it has application, transport, network, and the network interface. So it standardizes how data is transmitted across the networks by splitting communication tasks into 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. And that's one thing is that, okay, this is the OSI is some kind of theoretical guide, and also the TCP/IP. I ever try to understand why people don't like to further study the OSI, just because we already have the TCP/IP protocol, and it has been standardized. Okay, everyone can use it freely. Why should we need to design new communication or transmission protocols? It seems there's not too many scenarios asking us to design a new communication protocol, unless this kind of TCP/IP is not that much suitable. For example, we want to design this kind of new protocol, for example, for satellites to communication, or also for in the future for spaceship to do this kind of communications. If the protocol, the transmission, the data has some kind of longer distance, we might need to change this kind of communication protocol. But it's not that popular compared to this kind of the current networking. It means what? It means that in the current networking, the TCP/IP is able to cover 99% of application scenarios. That's why the OSI is just theoretical guide, and now many people would like to study or redesign a new version of TCP/IP protocol. Everyone can just use existing one as the API, and that's it. For example, if in the future you will design a new operating system, and in your new operating system, you also need to have these kinds of communication protocols. It can just use some existing TCP/IP protocol. It means that you can just use some kind of existing coding. You don't need to do the coding to re-implement this kind of TCP/IP. You just use some existing. Done. That's it. You can skip this part. So yes, again, the OSI has 7 layers, and the TCP/IP has the 4 layers. And each layer, we have some different functionalities. So this is the comparisons. OSI is a theoretical and more detailed approach for how to understand detail. Because for these kinds of the application layer, how to handle the data, it's not that clear, okay? Just an application, done, that's it. But the OSI trying to understand into 3 layer: application, presentation, and also the section. It means that how to have the data from the application to the section. I know some of you are now using the laptops, right? For example, you are using the browser. Just use the browser as an example. You use the browser to browse some news or some kind of applications. From that interface, what the information you can see actually is above. It's above the application layer. Okay, it's above the application, so it can be understood as the information you are browsing actually should be appear in the layer 7. But what's the application here? Application can be understood as the raw data that the browser has received. For example, the HTTP resource, for example, it will appear in the application layer. And the presentation and the section is somehow trying to do different functions to make sure that the browser can receive the data from server and do the so-called assembly and make sure that they can recover the data. And yes, that's why it has 3 layers here. And the TCP is for real-world internet communications. It's more practical. With protocol like the TCP and IP already in use when the model was developed. So we have the TCP/IP first, and then the OSI later. The TCP/IP model combines some layers from these 3 layers together, making it more straightforward but less descriptive compared to the OSI. It means that TCP try to combine these 2, for example, the data link and physical. Physical layer is just consider how to send the raw data from one device to another device. That's it. and the data link depth is make sure that the raw data is indeed useful. So yes, there are some kinds of difference. And inside this kinds of the layers for each application, there's something that we will not mention, but I want to explain here is the something that's called API called the socket. Inside this kind of sockets, it has some kinds of important parameters, and that kinds of parameters are some kinds of trying to specify what kinds of the underlying protocol we are going to use to make sure that we can have communications from one device to another device. Okay, just based on this one. So this kind of application layer, protocol like the HTTP, FTP, or SMTP, they have this protocol enable applications on A and B to communicate, specifying how the data should be formatted and handled at the user level. Okay, so this focus on different applications and how to handle and receive and send the raw data. And the transport layer protocol, we have two main protocols called TCP, UDP protocol. They manage the reliability of the data transport, means that we can use the TCP or use UDP to do the data transport, ensuring data is correctly sent from A to B, handling error detection, retransmission, or flow control. It doesn't mean that TCP and UDP have these kinds of functions, okay? In the following slides, I'm going to introduce some difference between the TCP and UDP, and also the difference of these kinds of TCP and UDP will also appear in the second assignment. And later, the next one under what is the internet layer protocol. That's one protocol is called IP protocol. IP protocol assign the IP address and routing the data package between device A and device B across the different networks, different local areas networks. And the last is the link layer protocol. Like the Ethernet or the Wi-Fi protocol defines how data is physically transmitted over the network medians between devices. For example, like in the year one, that networking subjects is more talking about the link layer protocol, how to transmit the data successfully from one device to another device. And from the application layer, when we're doing this kind of application, using this kind of socket, as long as we are able to specify, okay, we are running this kind of API, we specify is TCP or UDP, or specify the receiver's IP address, then yes, we can use this API to run the communications with remote devices. And okay, the next is the concept. Okay, this is not important, but because it's to make sure that we can communicate smoothly when talking about the data, especially returned by different protocols. In order not to be confused by different protocols, we try to have the different names for each data unit. Okay, data unit. We have the segment. This is the data returned from the transport layers. If the transport protocol is the TCP, the unit of data sent from the TCP or network layer is called a segment. We also have the so-called datagram. It's the data in the network layers. If the network protocol is the IP, the unit of the data is called a datagram, or sometimes we call it the IP packet. And if the above protocol is called UDP, we use the datagram as well. So yes, the main difference is that this is the UDP datagram or the IP datagram. And also the last one is the frame. Okay, it's the frame. This is data returned in the data link layer. It's the data unit and the data link layer. This is not important, but just to help you understand, okay, when we talk about the segment, package, or the frames, we're talking about different data units created by different protocols, and that's it. And this subject will not test you the memory of these kinds of the knowledge, memory knowledge. Okay. And this is trying to show what kinds of protocols appeared in different layer. We have from the application to the network access. There are lots of protocols. For example, like the website, the HTTP, we already know, and the file transfer. Nowadays, it's not that popular. Especially if you are not the IT managers, you probably will not use this kinds of protocol much. But nowadays, the email protocol is also very popular because nowadays email is a very important communications medium that we are using it now. And it has 3 protocols: SMTP, POP, and MAP, and also some other protocol for different applications. And the transport, we have the TCP and UDP. And the internet layer, the most important is the IP protocol. And we also have some other protocols, some protocol I call supporting protocol, like the ERP, ICMP protocols, or also the routing protocol. They just they are used together to make sure that we are able to allow to accept new registered device to join the networking. And the last one is the network access. There, for example, the Ethernet network protocol, and also some very old protocol like the PPP protocol. Because this kind of picture is from the internet. Okay, it means that we are not going to cover all protocols in this lecture slides. I haven't mentioned which protocol will be delivered or introduced in this. I think it will be in the last slide page. Okay, but just to have shown you, hey, we have different protocols at different layers. Some of them also have different security issues. Okay, that's why when I introduce these kinds of communication protocols, I will also mention what are potential security issues of this communication protocol. That's the motivation why we are going to introduce security protocols. Okay, and the next is how protocol works. For the protocol inside the network layers, for the protocols, the first key concept is called the payload. Okay, it's payload. What is payload? Payload can be understood as the input to protocols. Okay, as the input to the protocols. And after running a communication protocols, what has been changed is that it will become, after running the output can be understood as 2 parts: payload plus the so-called header. Okay, plus so-called header. And the payload is the actual data being transmitted from the top layer to the bottom layer. And the output has the header component and the payload. The header is the structural sections at the beginning of a package that contains the metadata about the package. Okay, and this kind of header is generated by the protocols. This metadata provides critical information for routing, delivering, and processing the data. And of course, some protocol could generate the footer. Footer means what? We have the header, payload, then some kinds of the footer adds the additional information. And that's the keyword is the structure. It means that what kinds of header should be well structured. Why? Because we can see this is background, right? There are some kinds of the data, and this is the real data in real communications. Because we can see that it's this kind of mean there's no meaning of this kinds of data or information. So it's very hard for us to understand what is this kinds of data here. So how can we make sure we can understand what this kinds of data is? We need to make sure that we can predefine the meaning of each byte or each bit information. That's why we need to have the so-called structure. Structure means, for example, the first 8 bits, or the first 2 bytes will be used for what kinds of purpose, and we use this kind of structure to make sure that the programs, the machine, is able to automatically read the data and understand what the mission is about. For example, given this kind of piece of information, right? For example, we would like to run the program to extract the IP address, for example, to extract the IP address. But we can see, oh, this is the raw data. And where's the IP address? See, if we don't have a where structure, it's very hard for us to know where the IP address is. That's why once we have this kind of where structure, we can define, okay, the IP address will appear on the 20 first bytes of this kinds of information. That we use some kind of predefined locations to specify the meaning of each byte or each bit. And the next one is for this kind of protocol, there's another keyword. It's called address. Okay, address. And if you are making a note, you can write down that this kind of address definitely will appear in the final exam, but just don't know what kinds of questions will appear. But definitely there we have at least one questions related to this kind of address. Each application layer will have a so-called different address for different purpose. For example, the application layout, we will have application specify the address. For example, you can use an application like the Outlook to manage different email address to receive and communicate, right? You will have multiple email address. And now we have the different application address, that's called the email address. Also, for example, the FTP protocol, we will have so-called different FTP, from even like the usernames. That's also the different address. And the next is the transport layer. Transport, the address is called the port address or port number. Port number, for example, we will use this kind of 80 for HTTP protocol. This will be the default, the port number. And a port number specifies a specific process on a device to facilitate communications between applications. So what's the meaning of this kind of specific process on a device to facilitate communication between applications? It means what? Because as I said that when we design this kind of communication, we have to let multiple or many devices to communicate with other devices at the same time. Okay, at the same time. It means that we allow this kind of communication to send the device out. We will allow another application to send the communicate data out. How can we distinguish that this data and that data came from different address or from different applications? We use the port number to distinguish it. Then, okay, we use different port number to distinguish for different applications, and that's the port number. So port number is to make sure that we allow different applications to communicate at the same time. The next is the network layer. Network layer, we have the so-called logical address, and this is the famous one called the IP address. IP address identify a device on a different networks at the internet layer. This kind, when we create this kind of internet, it's very complicated because we would like millions of devices to join this kind of internet at the same time. So how to manage this one conveniently? What we have to do, what we do is you will use the IP address. It means that, for example, the SIM campus, they allow to use this kind of address, and other campus to use different address to communicate. And that kind of address is the so-called the IP address. And make sure that each it means that if you join different networks, we will use the device and the NAN networks. Make sure that the network can manage the device conveniently, and that's the purpose of having the IP address. And don't worry about this kind of IP on MAC. Okay, this is just a brief overview. We will go to the details later. And the last one about the data link layer, we have the so-called physical address. It's called the MAC address. MAC address is related to, is uniquely identify a network interface on the local networks and the link layers. What's the meaning of MAC address? For each device, in our words, for each device, if that device was produced for communication, okay, was produced for communication, that device must have a unique MAC address. Okay, that's the standard process to make sure that that MAC address, that address is unique and is uniquely to join the networks for the communications. And that MAC is keyword is linked to the local network communications. So again, each layer will have a different address, and this address will be applied for different purpose. Okay, for different purpose. Okay, and the next is trying to show you some examples. Okay, some example of different headers, headers of different protocol. And the first one is the HTTP header. Okay, and this kind of header, the header inside the application is somehow different from other bottom network layers, because this will be shown in plain text, means that in language that we can understand. But in the following networks, following layers, you will see that the header is some kind of information will be presented that meaningless to us. For example, for the HTTP protocol, we also have lots of subprotocols. For example, we also have the post subprotocols, and this is structures. This is the structures of the header information. You will see, okay, this is so-called post, and you will have the which one. This is the link, and also the protocol versions, and also the host. It means the server. Okay, we specify the content type. Content type means that what kinds of message information will appear in the raw data. Okay, this is the raw data, and also the content length. Content length is trying to specify what is the total length of these kinds of data from the header plus to the payload. And how to distinguish the header and the payload? This kind of HTTP just use one blank line, okay, one break line to distinguish. This is the header, and this is the payload. Okay, this is the payload. And this kind of post in HTTP protocol is somehow once user click the button, after filling some forms, the browser will send the username and password to the remote server. Okay, and this is the information will be sent from your local computer to the remote server. Okay, and this is just one example. Use the post. And the next one is the TCP. TCP protocol. TCP protocol is much more complicated than this kind of HTTP header. It has a variable size, but everything has been structured. Okay. The minimum header size is 20 bytes, and this information is not important. Okay. It can be larger if optional fields are used. Just because with optional fields, just because of the whole header has been well structured into different fields, right? And some fields has been reserved for future purpose, and that field was called the optionals. And inside this kind of TCP header, the most important is this the most important is port number. It's the source port number, port address, or also the destination, the port address. How to understand this one? Suppose you are going to use, suppose your browser is trying to send something to the remote server, right? To the remote server, because previously I said that the HTTP protocol is going to use the port number 80. So when your is trying to send something via HTTP protocol to the remote server, this kind of the destination port number must be put with number 80. With the number 80, okay, with the number 80. Well, this kind of the source port number is not that important. Why? Because because each computer has thousands of the port number we can use. We can use to send it, and this source port number, it's just to make sure that sometimes to make sure that the remote server knows that which port number to respond or send by. The following ones, like the sequence number, acknowledge numbers, data offsets, flags, and window size, blah, blah, blah. All of this, the purpose of this one is to make is for communication successfully. Okay, it's not about the security, it's just for communication successfully. Yes, I'm going to introduce in the following lecture slides. Next, one thing related to security is this something called a checksum. Checksum is something try to check whether data has been somehow been modified or not. It provides a very basic version of related security is this kind of checksum, and this is the whole the TCP header. Of course, it's hard to understand, but if we try to into these kinds of structures, that will be easier for you to understand. Okay, we can see that the total one has been defined by the length is 32 bits. It means that the first 16 bit will be used for the source port number, and then the next 16 bits will be used for the destination port number, and following by different fields for different purpose. And this part is the payload, and following by the data. Okay. So yes, this is the everything is the in this kind of web, so something called the web structure. So we can see, for example, this one, the header length. The header length, with this kind of header length, make sure that the remote server can use a program or API to understand the whole data, which part is related to header information and which part is related to the payload. And for this TCP protocol, we are going to learn it on the, I think it should be the lecture 3. Yes. I'm going to introduce the detail in the lecture 3. And this is the pictures that showing the example of the TCP protocol. And actually, this image has been shown in the previous slides page. So this is the real data generated by the TCP protocol. I put it here just to make sure to introduce that actually for the data or payload headers under the application layers, they will be communicated in this kinds of information with the bits or bytes. Computers and networks works with binaries, means just 0 or 1. But binary is very long and hard to read, not human friendly. And so we usually represent in hexadecimal. And each hexadecimal represents 4 bits. So 2 hexadecimal here will be equivalent to 8 bits. And that's why the root network data is shown in this kinds of way. Okay, because this will be easier for us to understand the binaries of data in networks. I know that it's also not that much convenient compared to use the numbers from 1 to 10 or something, or from 0 to 9. But yes, just to match or to use the features of binaries, that's the only, using this kind of hexadecimal solution is the only friendly solution that we can use. Okay. So yes, this is just the example. This is some kind of raw data. Okay, the raw data that will be generated under the network layers. For the application layer need to do the so-called decoding this kind of data to becoming some kind of meaningful language to the humans. So we have this kind of coding, encoding, and decoding. This will happen in the application layer. Okay, will happen in the application layer. Or it means what? When your computer, laptop trying to send some kind of message to the remote server, right? You have, for example, using email, you type the messages, then your application client, the email client, should be able to try to encode the language into binaries, and then trying to run the network protocols to be able to communicate. And the next is the IP protocol. This is the V4 protocol header. It also have a different structure. Okay, it also have a different structure. It has a fixed minimum size, but can vary if options are used. Again, it must have a well structure. The minimum IPv4 the header size is 20 byte. And if it has the versions, because we have the IPv4 protocol, IPv6 protocols, and also the header length, and others, for example, like the type of service, total length, identification, blah, 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 and something important related to IP address. IP protocol is the IP address. Source IP address, destination IP address. Okay, source is the sender's IP address, and this is the destination's IP address. Means that each IP address is 32 bits. When we talk about the IP protocols, some of you know IPv4 protocol and IPv6 protocols. We have to use different version of protocol just because of it's not easy to change. So, okay, the current V4 protocol, the current IP address 32 bits, it's too short. It's not enough to fit all devices. So we can just extend this kind of IP address to, for example, to 64 bits. We cannot do it because this protocol has already been standardized. It has already been structured. If you just would like to change the IP address into 34 bits, for example, unfortunately, your protocol cannot be understood by other devices because everything has been standardized, has been fixed, and cannot be changed. That's why if we would like to change or upgrade the IP address, we have to use the different versions of the protocols. That's another story. Okay. And yes, this is the another structures to help you understand the header inside the IPv4 protocols. We have the so-called versions, yes, and the source address and the destination address. And we will see that, okay, we have different fields, right? But why the source address and the destination address, they were placed here? Well, it depends on the designer. In the futures, if you are the inventor of some important protocols, yes, you can design the headers and the orders by yourself. Okay. But yes, I also have no idea why it's designed in this way. Actually, we can also, for example, we can put the source address from the beginning, not here. Yes, and this is just to show you the structures of IP header. And yes, again, definitely we will introduce more about this IPv4 header and its vulnerabilities. And we also have the Ethernet, the header. Ethernet is trying to make sure that the data can communicate from one device, or data can be sent from one device to another device. Something different from previous is that this kind of Ethernet header is a fixed size. It has the fixed size, and also something important is that it also has the call address. We have the MAC address. Okay, it must have the destination MAC address and also the source MAC address. So we can see that the main protocol in each layer must have so-called address. That's why this kind of address definitely will appear in the final exam, because address is very is an important concept in the network security. And this is the is another way of trying to help you understand where is the header and where's the payload, the payload. And see, with this one also have the footer. This is the one of the example showing that not just have the header, but also have the footer. And the function part, each field we have a different function, right? In these subjects, if the field is not related to network security, I will not test it in the final exam. But if that field is important and related to the network security, definitely I will test it. Okay, at least I will prepare some exam related to that fields in the final exam, and that part it belongs to the memory, but there's no choice. You have to remember some basic but important in this subject. Okay, let's have another 10 minutes break. Okay, let's continue the lecture. Okay, now next I'm going to try to mine or previous knowledge related to address. Trying to briefly review how communication works. So this is well, this picture is pretty old, but it's fine. This is trying to show the local area network, like some kinds of networks at your house. We have a router, and the router trying to connect some device, your desktop or your laptop, trying to connect all of them together. And this is to show how the data can be communicated from one device, for example, from the desktop to the laptop. And inside these kinds of communications, we use the so-called the MAC address. We use the MAC address, and this is the suppose that here is the 87 and 10. We use this one 10 to denote the MAC address of this sender, and 87 to denote the MAC address of the receiver. And this is the structure of the data. We can see the MAC address and the payload. Okay. The MAC address and the payload. So when this kind of the data unit is sent to the router or the gateway, and then the gateway will based on the MAC address, and it will send to the receiver in their local area networks. Okay. So yes, this is some kinds of communication happen inside the local area networks based on the frame, or if you send the frame or the data unit, that's fine, just different names. So it happened inside the so-called local area networks. But the next is something happened. We send the data from one local area networks to another local area networks. To do this one, we need to have the so-called IP address. We use this different IP address to connect different devices in different networks. Here, in this kind of example, it will have three local area networks. LAN 1, LAN 2, and LAN 3. All of these ones we have all connected together. We call it the WAN, Wide Area Networks. If we would like to send the data from the sender in LAN 1 to receiver in the LAN 3, we need the IP address. Okay, but at the same time, we also need the MAC address. Why? This kind of MAC address, okay, the MAC address is not here from the sender need to specify the MAC address, right? But the MAC address is not the MAC address of the receiver. Here, the MAC address is to make sure that the data or the frame can be sent to the right receiver of the local LAN. And the MAC address here actually is the MAC address of the router of the gateway. Okay, so it means what? Because of this data is to send outside LAN 1, right? And the sender would like to do is just send the data to the gateway and let the gateway to decide where to send in the next destinations. So yes, and that's the main function of the MAC address. So we can see that in the LAN 1, in this kind of frame, right? The data is the same, but the MAC address is 2010, right? Then after this one, the MAC address has been changed from this one to the 33 and 99 because of what? The MAC address is to make sure that they can send in from the one destination to another destination inside local area networks. That's why the MAC address will be changed. But the IP address, AMP, that's the same, no change. Okay, so we can see from this one to this one, and from this one, it was sent to another receiver. And this one receiver was sent to the router. Okay, we send the router, and the router will forward this one to another one. So we can see that. So this kind of IP address decide to which local area networks this kind of data will be go to. But the IP address, the MAC address decides that which receiver will be in the local area networks. And this router or the gateway actually, for each router, it should be able to connect multiple networks together. But I would like to say that in most of router we have, especially for example the home, the home style the router, you will just have to connect to your home network to the outside networks. For example, to the facility providers. That's it. But for example, like the SIM campus, definitely you should be able to connect to different networks. For example, to connect to the government networks, to the education networks, to the public networks, and make sure that with this kind of router, it can provide not just security, but also some kinds of the speed or for efficiency purpose. And previously, we have introduced the MAC address and the IP address. It try to send the data from one sender to another receiver. Okay, but with this kind of example doesn't show what the data is or where is the data from. Right? We don't talk about the application and the data. Now, when we talk about different applications, for example, we have a sender and receiver, and if there are multiple applications from different apps, different applications, FTP or web browsers, they would like to communicate at the same time. So yes, we have the ABC refer to different application program, right? How can we make sure that these applications can use the same communications intermediate to send the data to the different applications of the same receiver? We use the port address. So this data, right? We put the AJ. AJ will be the port number. We use A to refer to this kind of application program, and J refer to the program of the receiver. So yes, this is the real data that the sender A has. But to send this kind of data to the receiver, then the sender need to inject the port number AJ, and the next is need to inject the IP address of the receiver, and also need to inject the MAC address. Okay, and make sure that this one will go through eventually to this kind of device, to the receiver device. And for the receiver device based on the operating system, right? Operating system, and then the different application we are trying to monitor or listen to different port numbers, and then try to retrieve the corresponding or the right data and apply that data to the applications. So yes, this is the reason why we have the so-called port number. Again, this kind of port number is to support the so-called parallel communications of different applications. So yes, this is the communication example showing the use of MAC address, IP address, and also the port number. Okay, next it's time to show some high level related to vulnerability of the so-called security. Previously, it's trying to revisit the networking protocols, not about the security. But this is the high-level introduction about the security called use and abuse. Protocols are designed for being used, okay, for make sure that users can run this protocol for applications or for some kinds of convenience purpose. But there are some kinds of hackers or try to illegally abuse or use this kind of protocols for their own purpose. That's something called use and abuse. And here I collect 5 cases, okay, 5 cases. But of course, this case is more related to the system security. The first one is called input form and SQL injection. And it's not about the network security, okay? It's more about the system security. For example, the web applications provide some kind of input fields, such as the login forms, search bars, or some kinds of the common sections where users can easily input data to make sure that can use this data to easier to communicate with the web servers. Okay, so users should send this kind of data to the server, make sure that the server can provide better service based on these kinds of data. But attackers can exploit these features by injecting malicious SQL queries into these forms to gain of unauthorized access to the database, retrieve sensitive information, or manipulate the data. Means what? This kind of actually for this kind of the input data is somehow trying to it's the data, okay? It's the data that we hope that the server can use this data to help improve the search for input. But the attacker is trying to change this kind of data into commands and make sure that or programs and make sure that the server will run these kinds of illegal programs. Once running these kinds of illegal programs, it will pop up or it will send some unauthorized data back to the client. For example, we can put some kinds of command saying that, okay, we can retrieve our password and return it back to the client. Then the client should be able to send to seize our user's password. That's why this kind of nowadays I said that security is not easy because this kind of use and abuse. For each protocol or each convenience protocol there, we have created for users to use. We must consider any vulnerability inside this kind of protocol. The second one is called the SMTP protocol. It's the email protocol. It's something called Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. And it's used to send email. Okay, it's not to receive, just to send emails. It's to send email across the internet, allowing users to communicate through the email service. For example, we have different mail server. This mail server would like to send an email from this mail server to another server. It enables the transfer of any email between the servers and ensure that message reach their intended recipients. For example, we have the Gmail server, right? We also have the Microsoft mail server. They want users in the Gmail domain would like to send the email to another email in the Microsoft domain. Yes, for example, this is the SMTP protocol. But abuse is that attacks exploit the protocol's lack of built-in authentications by sending emails which forge sender address. This enables attacks to impersonate trusted source, leading to security threats like the phishing attacks. Why? When this kind of SMTP protocol was designed, there's no security protections. So this is a communication protocol, not the security protocol. Not the security protocol. It means what? Everything is transferred in plaintext and there's no authentication. For example, there's no password here, but everything is in plaintext. It means that what? Suppose I'm the sender, right? And there's a remote receiver. When I upload the message, I says that, okay, this mail is from Alice. Then that receiver must will just accept, this email is from Alice. There's no verification. There's no verification. And because of this kinds of protocol, the attackers can impersonate trusted sources and leading to some kinds of security threats like the phishing attacks. And another one is the so-called TCP protocol. TCP protocol is the inside in the transport layer protocol ensure reliable and ordered data transmissions between devices through something called three-way handshake protocol. Now, don't worry about this one. If you don't understand, that's fine, because we are going to introduce it deeper and in detail. Using a flag called SYN flag to establish a connection. And this process makes the TCP ideal for applications like web browsing, email, and blah, 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 blah. And abuse, well, this protocol is to make sure that we have a reliable communication using the three-way handshake. And but the TCP can be abused through something attack called flooding attacks. Because of what? In this kind of attack, adversaries can exploit the initial connection process by sending a large of SYN request to a server, but never complete a three-way handshake. This kind of three-way handshake is this. The server will create a piece of resource And this kind of resource will be waiting for one client to complete this the so-called handshake. Okay, we create a piece of resource waiting for client's message to complete the handshake and protocol. The hacker will pretend there are lots of different clients sending a large number of requests. It means at the end, it means what? For each request, the server will consume one piece of resource. If there are thousands, 10,000s, millions of requests at the same time from different resources, it means what? Eventually, the server will create a huge resource waiting for client's response. But the clients actually they will not respond. It means what? These kinds of huge number of resources are wasted. Once a significant number of resources of server is wasted, it means what? When there's a legal request from a normal standard user, these kinds of requests will not be responded. Okay, will not be responded. And because of this, we have the so-called attack called the DOS, denial of service attack. And because of what? Because of the server is down. And why the server is down? Because of the server has created lots of resource, and that resource has been wasted. And this is the reason why there is something called the denial of service attack. The next one is called the ICMP protocol. It's the Internet Control Message Protocol. It's a protocol inside the network layer. It's a supporting protocol to support the main IP protocol. It's a network layer protocol used mainly for diagnostic purpose. It's something trying to say that something is wrong. Okay, something is wrong. And for example, the IT admin try to check what has happened. So this kind of protocol is to check the connectivities between the device using some API or tool or protocol like called the ping protocol or trace route protocol. It helps users detect the network issues by sending echo requests and receiving the echo replies, ensuring smooth communications between devices. This is something called force device to do response. For example, if I run this protocol, it means that when I say something, all devices, if you receive my request or this kind of protocol, you must respond to my message. You must respond to my message. But once I say you must respond to my messages, then there's a big disaster because I'm the attacker. I try to send lots of ICMP protocol messages, and all of you need to echo or reply or respond to my protocol, and then it will consume all your resource, and that's the attack. So ICMP can be abused through attacks like the flooding attacks, and the attack send a large number of ICMP echo requests to a target and overwhelming it and causing a denial service attack. And this is some kind of attack because it's something called a broadcast address, because I send the ICMP protocol and all devices in the same networks will receive this kind of protocol message and must reply to this kind of protocol, and it will cause some kinds of issues. So yes, this is another protocol we are going to introduce. Okay, we are not going to introduce not just this. And another issue is called ARP spoofing attacks. This kind of is called address resolution protocol. It's the fundamental protocol in the local networks that allow devices to automatically map IP address to the MAC address, trying to link. Okay, it means that what is the MAC address of this IP address, for example. And this is some kind of request, a message will be sent to the local area networks. Okay, and the purpose of this one is to make sure that the device can have communications automatically without the so-called manual configurations. But that this kind of protocol is something like this one. Okay, suppose protocol is something like this one. I'm one of the device. I will ask, okay, what is the MAC address of this IP address 1.1.1. This one, for example, this one. Then, if you receive this kinds of message, everyone can reply. The real MAC address of this IP address is blah 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 blah. All devices can do this one. But if all devices can do or can reply to this kinds of message, there will be issued because the attackers can pretend. Okay, this MAC address is this, but with a fake or wrong one, and then it will cause some kinds of issues. So in detail, ARP can be abused through the spoofing. Spoofing means fake. Okay, sending some kind of fake messages. Attacker exploit the protocol's lack of authentication by sending false ARP messages, associating their MAC address with another device's IP address. This enables attacks to intercept modified block traffic, leading to a security threat like the man-in-the-middle attacks or denial of service attacks. Okay, and example similar to this one is asking, okay, where so for example, what is a function? For example, why is the lecture? Why is the function? If you anyone will reply with sending a false different address, for example, now he is in building A or something else, that means that we will go to a wrong room numbers, and this is something we cannot means that we can not link to the right IP address. It will impact the following communications, and this is another abuse of communication protocol. When we talk about this kinds of protocol, all protocols are not security protocol. There's no built-in security inside this kinds of protocol. That's why they have the so-called security. And this is quite normal, okay? This is quite normal. In the futures, if you are working on a project, the first versions of your app, you should not consider security. Okay, don't consider security at especially your first step. Your first step is to make sure that you can run this kind of application. You can make sure you can run this kind of application. Make sure that you can send the data from one device to another device. Once your apps can communications, can do this kind of communications, then you consider how to protect your communications. So yes, this should be the right process, because if you try to consider everything together, then the whole project will become very complicated, and this might become a big issue, and you might not be able to create or complete your project successfully. So yes, security is important, but don't put it as the first step. Okay, and the next one is trying to understand the attacks, classifications of attacks. I try to classify the attacks in different categories based on different ways, according to the different ways. Here, I try to classify the attack in 4 ways. Okay, 4 ways. This is not just 4 categories. Okay, not 4 categories, but we do the different classification based on different ways. So the first is the target of attacks, means that which entity to be attacked. Okay, how to classify or how to understand the attacks based on these kinds of classifications. And when this kind of target of attacks, it refers to the specific entities that attacks aim to compromise, exploit, or disrupt in their malicious activities. And in the context of the host or the user or client and server, okay, client and server, the server could be the target, or the client or users could be the target. And host refer to the device such as the server, computers, or network equivalent that provides resource or sensitive or service within a network, while the user refer to the individual client. Okay, but nowadays I would like to say, if there's an attack, definitely the server will be, or the host will be attacked, because they are more valuable. They should store all clients' individual data. For example, the password, they are more valuable compared to the individual target. And when talking about this kind of target of attacks, this they does not only refer to who or what is attacked, but can also be understood as what protocol being violated or being attacked. Okay. So when we say, okay, this protocol trying to attack the protocol, right? There are two types of attacks. One attack is to attack the communication protocol. Okay, it's to attack this kind of communication protocol. For example, the previous ARP attack or ICMP security, they refer to attack the communication. Another one is trying to attack the security protocol. Okay, attack the security protocol. Okay, attack the security protocol. It means what? First, we have the so-called communication protocol first. Suppose we have a communication protocol. Later, these kinds of communication protocol are found in security. So we try to design security protocol to replace the communication protocol. But later, the design security protocols are found insecure. So people are able to attack these kinds of security protocol. That's why it's something different between attack communication protocol and attack the security protocol. I would like to say attacking security protocols are harder compared to attacking communication protocol. Of course, because the security protocol, they must consider attacks when they are designing. In this lecture, you are going to learn the so-called man-in-the-middle attack, right? That attack mainly refer to attacking security protocol. Okay, attacking the security protocol. And if you are making a note, yes, this slide page is also important, because I have already created one question somehow related to this slide page. Okay, and the next one is the so-called scope of attacks. This is more like about the way of attacks, how to categorize the attacks by the hackers. The one is called passive attacks, another one is called active attacks. And these two types differ in how the attack interact with the communication process. Passive means it involves monitoring or eavesdropping, or just listening to the communications between two devices without letting them know that there is an attack. And the goal is usually to gather information without being detected. Let's call the passive attacks. And active attacks involve direct interactions with the communications, often aiming to alert, disrupt, manipulate data, or do some kind of changes. Okay, and these attacks can damage the integrity, availability, and authenticity of the networks. Of course, the activity attacks somehow active attack is somehow more marked compared to the passive attack, of course, because the attacker need to do something during the attack, not just listening to. For example, like the man-in-the-middle attack, it will be in this kind of active attack. And the weight of attacks is referred to the various techniques or methods that adversaries use to exploit vulnerabilities and compromise the security. So we have the flooding. Flooding attack is to overwhelming the networks or service to create the so-called denial service attack, send lots of messages to one receiver. Spoofing attack means to change or impersonate something, okay, or try to impersonate or change, alert something and become illegal. And sniffing is more like the related to the so-called eavesdropping attack. Okay. Try to capture sensitive information. Okay. Injection attack. Injection attacks is somehow trying to what? It's inject malicious data into the standard or legal data to create some kind of the security issue. For example, this should be the right data we send, right? We inject some kind of commands or something else inside this kind of data. It's called injections. And we also have the so-called man in the middle attacks. It's we are going to introduce this one, so I'm not mention in detail. We also have a replay attack. Replay attack is to capture and retransmit the valid data from one device to another device to trick some kinds of unauthorized actions. Replace means that the hacker has seen the data sent from device A to device B, right? But the hacker trying to record that data and resend that data again on the same day to device B. And also have the so-called social engineering attacks. It's trying to use the attack related to the humans, try to trick something like the following attack called phishing attacks. It's a common form of social engineering where attacks trying to do some kind of trick ways to ask the IT admins of people to click some kinds of links to steal their username or password or something else. And the goal of attacks, this is related to the CIA. Confidentiality, integrity, and A. We could have the availability and also about the authenticity attacks. And for security protocols, you must know that we don't require to protect CIA. We don't need to protect all of them at the same time. There are some protocols we don't need to provide the confidentiality, but just to provide the integrity for them. Okay. But of course, for all protocols in network security, if the data need the confidentiality protections, we usually also require some kind of integrity protection. But the opposite is not. It's not true. Okay, it's not true. So, and how to secure the network protocols? So in the previous 2 hours, I have introduced the high level of the security use and abuse. The next is how to secure the network protocol. Actually, I think I have briefly explained the idea. First, the protocols are designed for being used, but they could be abused by attackers. So how to secure the communication protocol A, for example, this kind of protocol is insecure. And there are two solutions. Sorry, not solution. There are two directions. The first direction is we design a new security protocol called A star to replace A. Means that we will run A star. We will not run A protocol or run a new version of protocol. So yes, now this kind of this is the one direction. We run A star instead of it means that this kind of A protocol A will not be supported anymore. Should not be supported anymore. Another direction is that we design a security protocol B and try to protect the protocol A. It means that we will run when we need to run the protocol A, we will run the protocol B together. Means we will run A and B, and we use B to plus A. Okay. So this is two directions to secure the communication protocol A. And in previous slides, I also mentioned the security protocol had two categories, right? Had two categories. One category is for communication and also for security purpose. So we can see that suppose A is a communication protocol, and here this kind of security protocol A star should be integrated of communication and security purpose. But for the second direction, this kind of security protocol should not provide
communication purpose. It's just used to protect the communication protocol A. So yes, we have the two different directions to protect a communication protocol. And for this kind of protocol, so the next is how to design a security protocol. Yes, we must use the cryptography, especially when we need to protect the confidentiality or integrity inside this kind of protocol. And we could use some kind of security mechanisms, especially when the protocols are complicated. And with security mechanisms, yes, I will introduce it later. But yes, again, for confidentiality and integrity, we must use the cryptography. But especially about the availability, not authenticity, about availability, sometimes we don't need to use the cryptography. We can use some security mechanism that would be good enough to mitigate attacks to achieve the or towards availability. Okay, so what is security mechanism? Security mechanism is some kind of rules and actions. Do X if Y happens. So security mechanisms are monitoring something, and it has some kind of trigger condition that the program if learn something like this kind of trigger program. Here, Y is the trigger conditions under the monitoring, and X is the detailed the actions. And this is the example. For example, we can design how can we protect the password access to an account using an account. We can delay the verification for 1 minute, or even lock this account for 1 hour if access to an account has failed more than 3 times. We can use this kind of mechanism to mitigate, just reduce the impact of this kind of password guessing attacks. There's attacks trying to guess my password and my email address, and if failed for more than 3 times, then any access to this account via this kind of, for example, by this IP address or the whole IP address will be delayed for verifications. Or that's another example of this kind of mechanism is this kind of description. This is something more like happen in firewall. Drop the IP package if the resource IP address is not this kind of IP address. For example, in some countries we know that we would like to control the communications, make sure that the message inside any forums will not create any misleading or something else. It also has the same functionality. They try to monitor and check, and if any message, for example, will be created by this account, then it will be forbidden and deleted or will not appear. And that's somehow very similar to this kind of mechanisms. Drop any messages if this message was sent by this accounts, for example, they should not appear. And this is also some kinds of thing called a security mechanism. See, there's no cryptography here, okay? There's no cryptography here. But these kinds of mechanisms are very helpful in our real networking, trying to mitigate the attacks. They are very helpful without using the cryptography. And one of the examples that we are going to learn in lecture 7 is the firewall. And the firewall is the security mechanism that monitors controls incoming and outgoing network traffic based on predefined security rules. It acts as a barrier between trusted internal networks and untrusted external networks, and filtering data to prevent unauthorized access or response. In the past 2 years, that's one question appeared in the final exam. The question is very short. That question asks, can you use one word to describe how firewall works? See, and I have used the underline to highlight which keywords that you should use to answer that questions. So yes, that's the answer. Okay, and what will be introduced in this subject? So yes, of course, we are going to introduce some kinds of communication protocol because they are basics. Without mentioning communication protocol, we cannot talk about security. Next, we will talk about some kinds of vulnerabilities and then how to design security protocols and from the cryptography and also some kinds of security mechanisms without using cryptography in the lecture 7, only in lecture 7. Most of them are about security protocols from the cryptography. And these are the protocols to be introduced. We can see that we have these are all the protocols, and these are all the security protocols that we are going to introduce in the following lectures. At this stage, you cannot understand or even remember them. It's fine, but you should be able to remember them after our lectures, because then maybe there could have one questions. I will give you 4 protocols, and I will ask you to identify which protocol is about security protocol. You should be able to identify which protocol is the security protocol, not the communication protocols. Okay, that's it for the lecture 1, and see you soon. You can have extra 5 minutes to go and have a lunch. We'll see you at 12.